It was a sunny morning when I first heard about Officer Jake Thompson. He had been with the department for over 10 years, and everyone knew him as a dedicated cop, a true hero. I had seen him around the station, always smiling, always calm, even during the toughest times. But that day felt different. I was sitting at my desk, sorting through some paperwork when I heard the gossip in the hallway. "Jake's been accused," someone whispered. I paused, heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean, accused?" I asked, stepping out of my office. The officer looked over at me, his face grim. "Of corruption, selling information to criminals. It's all over the news." I couldn't believe it. Jake? The man who always put the law first? The one who loved working with his canine partner Max more than anything else in the world? It made no sense. I immediately thought of Max, the German shepherd who was Jake's partner in every sense of the word. They were a team, inseparable. I had seen them in action on countless cases, Jake and Max, working together, trusting each other. I couldn't fathom what had happened. The thought of Max without Jake, it broke my heart. I needed to talk to him, to hear his side of the story. But for now, all I could do was wait and hope that things would somehow make sense. Days passed, and the weight of the accusation seemed to grow heavier on Jake. His face, once full of confidence, now looked hollow, drained of life. He was suspended from his job, and everything around him seemed to crumble. I visited him a few times at his home, but he wouldn't talk about what happened. He kept his head down, staring at the floor, his mind clearly elsewhere. It wasn't until I showed up one morning, knocking gently on his door, that something changed. "I can't lose him," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper as I walked in. He was staring at a picture of Max, his loyal canine companion, a bond forged in the heat of battle. The rush of adrenaline and moments of quiet understanding. Max had been taken away when the accusations were made, and he hadn't seen him since. "I know, Jake. I know you feel like the world's turned against you. But you have to trust that the truth will come out," I said, trying to reassure him. I had always known Jake to be a man of integrity, and I knew that if there was anyone who could clear their name, it was him. But right now, the darkness of the false accusation was swallowing him whole. He looked at me, his eyes full of pain. "I need to see Max again. He's the only one who knows who I really am. He was with me through everything, and I don't know what to do without him." "I'll help you, Jake. We'll get him back." And right then, something inside me knew. No matter what it took, I wouldn't let Jake go through this alone. Max deserved to be with him, and Jake deserved the truth to come out. I just needed to find a way to make it happen. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and paperwork. I knew the department wasn't going to make it easy for Jake to reunite with Max. They had separated them as part of the investigation, and the higher-ups weren't about to let a suspended officer take his K9 back, not until everything was cleared up. It felt like I was fighting against a brick wall at every turn. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't give up on Jake. He had given everything to this job, and I had seen the way his heart broke when he spoke of Max. Their bond wasn't just professional, it was something deeper. They were family. I spent hours talking to anyone I could. Officers, old friends, even people who had worked with Jake in the past. And slowly, piece by piece, the truth started to emerge. It wasn't corruption that had accused him, but a setup. Someone had framed him, planted false evidence, and set him up to fall. It was hard to believe at first. Jake was the kind of person who didn't have a bad bone in his body. But as more evidence surfaced, it became clear. He hadn't done anything wrong. "I'm getting closer," I told him one evening when I found him sitting quietly in his living room, staring out the window. "The truth is out there, Jake. We just have to keep pushing for it." He didn't respond, but I could see a flicker of hope in his eyes. For the first time in days, there was a glimmer of the old Jake, the one who never gave up. And then, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. I got a call from the department. Jake could finally see Max again. The truth was coming to light, and they couldn't keep them apart any longer. I rushed over to Jake's place, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew this was it. It was time for them to be reunited, for the love and trust they shared to heal everything that had broken. "Are you ready?" I asked Jake, standing in his doorway. He nodded, but I could see his hands shaking. I don't know if I can handle it, but I have to try." We drove to the shelter where Max had been temporarily placed. As we pulled into the parking lot, Jake's eyes locked onto the door. He could sense Max was close. I could feel the tension in the air, the silent anticipation. And then I saw him. The familiar, loyal face of Max. He was waiting by the door, his ears perked up as he spotted Jake. The moment they saw each other, it was as if the world stood still. Max's tail wagged furiously, and he barked in excitement. He ran straight to Jake, leaping into his arms. Jake caught him, his voice breaking as he whispered, "I missed you, buddy. I never stopped fighting for you." I stood back, tears streaming down my face, watching as Jake and Max shared a moment that no words could describe. It was pure love, pure joy. In that moment, everything they had been through, the pain, the loneliness, seemed to melt away. And for the first time in a long time, I saw Jake smile. A real smile, full of gratitude and relief. He wasn't just getting his canine back. He was getting back his best friend, the one who never judged, who never doubted, who was always there. But the most beautiful part? It was only the beginning of the healing. Jake and Max, together again, would face the world side by side, and nothing could ever tear them apart. It wasn't an easy road ahead for Jake, even with Max by his side. The false accusations had left a scar on his reputation, and it would take time for him to fully rebuild the trust of the department and the people who had once looked up to him. But with Max there, Jake had the strength to keep going. They were a team again, and no matter how tough it got, they weren't backing down. For weeks, Jake worked tirelessly with his lawyer, going through every piece of evidence, every tiny detail of the case. Max never left his side, sitting patiently at his feet during long nights of paperwork, or standing by the door when Jake would head out to meet with his attorney. There was something comforting about the way Max always knew when Jake needed him the most, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of confusion and pain. Then came the day when the truth was finally revealed. The person responsible for framing Jake was someone who had once been close to him, another officer who had been involved in illegal activities. They had set Jake up, hoping to take him down and cover their tracks. When the investigation uncovered this, the department had no choice but to clear Jake's name. It was a bittersweet victory. The damage had already been done, Jake's career was in ruins, and the department had already suspended him. But with the truth on his side, Jake was determined to make a fresh start. On the day they reinstated him, he stood in front of the department, Max at his side, and addressed everyone who had once turned their backs on him. His voice was steady, but I could hear the emotion behind his words. "I've been through hell," Jake said, his gaze never leaving the room. "But I'm not here to dwell on the past. I'm here to move forward. I'm here to prove that no matter how dark it gets, the truth will always come out. I've got Max back, and together, we'll continue doing what we do best, fighting for what's right." The room was still, the tension thick in the air. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Jake stood there, his shoulders square, Max by his side, the weight of everything he had been through in his eyes. There was a vulnerability to him, but also a quiet strength, a kind of resilience that no one could ignore. The silence stretched on, each second more unbearable than the last, and I could feel the doubt, the hesitation, hanging over the room. Then, slowly, it happened. One officer in the back stood up, and the sound of a single clap echoed through the room. At first, it felt almost too soft, too uncertain, but it wasn't long before another officer joined in, and then another. The noise grew, the sound of clapping becoming louder, more powerful, until it felt like the whole room was alive with a kind of unspoken respect. But it wasn't just for Jake, I realized. It was for Max, too. The bond they shared, the loyalty that had never wavered, even when everything else had fallen apart, was something that went beyond words. Max had never left Jake's side. Through every dark moment, every unjust accusation, Max had been there, offering quiet comfort, reminding Jake that no matter what happened, he wasn't alone. It wasn't just about the job. It wasn't just about the badge. It was about something deeper: trust, friendship, and the kind of loyalty that couldn't be broken by any of the world's cruelty. They had been through a trial most of these officers would never understand. They'd lost everything: Jake's career, his reputation, and for a while, even each other. but they had come back stronger, together, proving that the bond they had could never be torn apart. And as the last of the officers stood and clapped, it was clear to everyone in the room. Jake and Max had earned their place back here, not just because of the truth, but because of who they were. They had shown strength when most people would have fallen. They had shown heart when the world had tried to take it from them. In that moment, as the applause continued, I saw something in Jake I hadn't seen before, a quiet acceptance, a peace that came from knowing he had finally been seen for who he truly was. And Max, standing tall beside him, his eyes filled with pride, knew that they had made it through. They were home. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be people who doubted Jake, still be whispers in the hallway, people who would never fully believe in his innocence, no matter how many times the truth was laid out. There would be those who remembered the accusations, who would look at him with suspicion, and who would always wonder whether he was truly the man they had once admired. The scars of this betrayal would take time to heal, and even then, there would always be a shadow of doubt in the minds of some. But none of that mattered, not to Jake, and not to me, because Jake had Max, and Max had Jake. Together, they were unstoppable. Through everything they had been through, the heartache, the lies, the separation, nothing had been able to break their bond. No matter how hard the road ahead might seem, no matter how many people tried to tear them down, they had each other. As I watched Jake and Max walk out of the department that evening, side by side, I realized something. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It wasn't about a badge or a uniform. It wasn't about the department's approval or the recognition he once had. It was about redemption, about reclaiming who he was and proving to himself, to Max, and to the world that integrity and loyalty could never be stolen. Jake wasn't just a cop. He was a man who had fought for what was right, a man who had fought to clear his name. But he was also a man who had faced unimaginable loss and had come back stronger because he never gave up, because he always had Max by his side. And Max, that loyal, steadfast dog, had stood by him, offering the kind of unconditional love that only a canine partner could give. Max wasn't just his partner. He was his family. Together, they were more than just two beings. They were a team, a unit that no one could ever break apart. As they walked into the golden light of the setting sun, their silhouettes framed by the last rays of the day, I felt a profound peace wash over me. It was as if the world had, for once, stopped to acknowledge their journey, the struggles they had faced, and the love that had carried them through. The world had tried to tear them apart, tried to break them, but in the end, love and loyalty had brought them back together. They had been tested, but they had come out the other side stronger, more united than ever. And that, I realized, was something no one could ever take away. Their bond was unbreakable, and as they walked off into the fading light, I knew that no matter what came next, they had already won. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this story and want to see more heartwarming, dramatic tales just like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world. If this story moved you, go ahead and like the video and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And of course, if you know someone who would enjoy this, don't hesitate to share it with them. Thanks so much for being part of this journey. I can't wait to bring you more stories that will leave you inspired and emotional. See you in the next one.